I'm Karima Brown. It's Sunday morning and it's time for The Fix. We take a closer look at the vexed question of the independence and mandate of the South African Reserve Bank with our expert economic panel. Then we look at the ongoing 15-year-old battle in Xolobeni, a community that refuses to leave their land and hand it over to an Australian mining giant. Lastly, we take a close look at the weekend papers to see what's made headlines this week and why. The Fix starts now. This is The Fix, where every Sunday, without fear or favour, we question the big hitters. We will look ahead and tell you what matters, how it affects you, and why you should care. And as usual, I'm joined by my sparring partners, Sunday Times and Business Day columnist, Peter Bruce. Peter, what a week.
It was incredible. Actually, it's one of the most breathtaking weeks I think I've experienced as a journalist in democratic South Africa. What we have here is clear evidence that the Watson family, previously known for bravely having stood up and refused to play segregated rugby. I mean, Cheeky Watson would have been a Springbok had he not had the principles that he did. Anyway, they've basically had the ANC captured right from the start.
From the word go.
Even before, so this business has survived on contracts given to it by various ministries and by simply being, not even subtle about it, paying bribes. I mean, the Sunday Times is reporting this morning that in order to get something out of Nomvula Mokonyane, they not only gave her 300,000 rand.
They had to give her a Louis Vuitton bag.
They had to put it in a Louis Vuitton bag as well.
It's absolutely incredible. But I think the human cost of what they've done is also really important. There was a Director General at Correctional Services.
Which is where they started. That's where they got their first contract.
And he actually was onto them. He received death threats. His wife received death threats. He had to have protectors. The person that usually checked up on him from the Brooklyn police station died mysteriously. They moved him to the Sports and Recreation.
What was his name? I remember.
Vernie Peterson.
Let's not forget that name, actually.
It's actually critical because he is actually one of the victims of Bosasa.
He's late human now, right?
terms, he's late. He's passed away. But the kind of harassment that he faced. And what we need to understand, of course, is Lyndon T., who is also a name that appears on the list, was actually in charge of correctional services. And then, of course, we see that Mr. Tom Moyani's name also appears on the list of the people that the Watson brothers had in their pocket. But, I mean, very few ANC people can stand the test of not being linked to Bosasa.
No, including, I'm afraid, the president, because he now has to, he's got to somehow explain how, you remember when he was asked about a donation to his campaign of 500,000 rand last year, and he said, no, that was a contract between Bosasa and my son. And he then later corrected that. But even if it was a contract between Bosasa and his son, why didn't he not, why did he not levitate? Why did he not do something about it? Because these people hold our country and our state in absolute contempt.
Yes, and of course what we need to see here is that if you look at the fact that they've had all these contracts under the previous regimes, one could almost say that they were trying to make a down payment, if you like, depending on who wins. So I'd also like to see, for example, whether they made a donation to the NDZ campaign, because they've all have had to take out some kind of insurance.
They're great bet hedges, so they would have played both sides.
There's an important little thing here. If you make a donation, you're supposed to pay tax. And so it's interesting. And the president is going to have to come to the commission to talk about this. And his son, Andile, will have to come and explain himself.
Well, I think it's the donatee, donator, who pays the donation tax. I'm not a tax expert. Angelo Agrizi, who's been giving this evidence and is apparently going to give a lot more next week, according to the Sunday papers, is going to need serious arm protection.
Absolutely. And the problem with the Commission at the moment is that there are so many breaches and so many leaks. Some people are suggesting that the remnants of the state capture people in the criminal justice system that used to report to Jacob Zuma, are actually there. Because if you look at, for example, the person that was suspended from the Commission, that person is seconded from the Justice Department. So Minister Minister Masuta must actually explain.
Now,
and the vetting process, how did they vet these individuals?
So this was the secretary of the Zondo Commission, right?
Yes.
Basically the administrator of the whole thing. So he knows what's coming. Yes. He knows who's going to say what. He sees the documents probably before anybody else sees them. He certainly would prepare them. You can hardly imagine what he must have been thinking when he saw that this guy was coming and what he was going to say. Why did he not walk a month ago? Or
Absolutely. Or come before the Commission.
Perhaps the job is to hang in there as long as possible.
I think that is the issue. And there's a lot of vested interest to try and collapse this Commission. Yeah. And those who have been outed, either the Gupta leaks or Bosasa, all have it in their interest to try and collapse this Commission. Yeah. And I think President Cyril Ramaphosa will have to address himself.
He really has to do something serious because, if I'm not mistaken, there is an ANC, NEC, Lekgotla this week.
Yes, there's a.
After which he will go to,
to Davos.
To Davos.
Yeah.
He's got to clear this up, some of this up anyway before Davos. It's got to be like a holding position for Ramaphosa before he leaves the country.
Absolutely. I got some information from the NEC this morning. They're sitting, and there's a consistent push that nobody must be protected, that the African National Congress will support this Commission of Inquiry, and that Cyril Ramaphosa will have to go and testify and will have to say something before he leaves for Davos, as you correctly say. And, of course, the other burning issue is Zimbabwe. I mean, Zimbabwe is busy imploding, Peter. Its effects on us, on our economy, on everything, our services, is massive. We have to come with a clear position.
Well, I mean, you now once again have the Zimbabwean government shooting its own citizens. I mean, it's extraordinary, you know. You can't... I don't know what South Africa can do. I mean, there's a case for not doing anything.
Yes.
You know, we can't just charge in and say and interfere in other countries' affairs, etc., etc. What we certainly need to do is to make clear to the leadership there, and that's not the president, it's the military, is that we thoroughly disapprove, and that we're not going to help them if they ask for it.
But I think there is a case also for us to interfere, as in deal with some of the economic issues, because it's going to impact on us. It is something that we can explore with our econ panel, because certainly some people are suggesting that the crisis in Zimbabwe is chiefly a crisis that there's no foreign currency, and Emerson Mnangagwa is trying to get that from Russia, and then of course made that ridiculous tweet whilst cutting his whole country off from social media. So a lot, of course, that we are going to be discussing. Joining us after the break for our panel discussion on the independence and mandate of the South African Reserve Bank, before, of course, has become a very contentious issue and remains one. We will be discussing that. Stay with us.